So I'm Robin Sclafani, and I'm the executive director of CEJI. We make a Jewish contribution to an inclusive Europe. We were founded in 1991 here in Brussels to work at EU level to provide a Jewish voice in terms of policy areas of concern and in the whole anti-discrimination field. So since the beginning, we have a Jewish identity, but we fight all forms of discrimination, and we do that primarily through training and promoting also inclusive education and educational policies, as well as training policies in relation to hate speech and hate crime. We have a couple of pillar initiatives that we're really excited about. One of them is called Facing Facts Network, which was founded in 2011 to provide a new civil society response to the problems of hate crime and hate speech. Now it is a network with a framework partnership agreement with the European Commission to be the civil society interlocutor on matters related to hate speech and hate crime and follow the various high-level groups in that field. The Facing Facts Network has now almost 30 members all around the EU. And what's really interesting about it, it crosses all different communities who are targeted by bias-motivated incidents, as well as some law enforcement agencies and public authorities in the same network. So Facing Facts Network is a learning network amongst all the different stakeholders, and it's supported by the Facing Facts Online e-learning platform, which has a variety of courses in this field of hate crime and hate speech. Also, another pillar initiative that we're really excited about that was started about 3 years ago is NOAH, which in Hebrew means in motion. The acronym stands for Networks Overcoming Anti-Semitism. And this is also a really exciting project. It's the first one where we could really focus on one form of discrimination as opposed to our usual approach these last 30 years to work on policy areas of mutual concern for different communities who are racialized and victimized by discrimination of one kind or another. And one of the things in the NOAH project, which is really exciting, which we hope will also have relevance for the anti-racism movement more broadly, is the National Report Cards research action methodology that we've been testing the last couple of years in order to benchmark national policies across, well, we look at 10 policy areas. So to benchmark the national policies so that we can see more clearly the gaps and the opportunities to improve national policy to prevent and address anti-Semitism. And we believe very strongly that the indicators that we're using in relation to fostering Jewish life and dealing with anti-Semitism are the same policy indicators which are relevant also for other communities, for example, in thinking about national action plans against racism. For sure, there may be other categories which are added when looking at other forms of discrimination and their specificity, but the ones that are included in the NOAH report card are also relevant for others. For example, education, culture, remembrance, hate speech, hate crime, media, sports, religious freedom. I'm forgetting all of them, but there are 10 of them. And on the NOAH-project.eu website, you can find more information about the national report card. Yeah, it was like this from the beginning for us. And the logic there is multifold. One is that a Europe which is inclusive, respecting human rights, it's like that for everybody. It's not only a Jewish concern. So in that sense, you can't say it's inclusive for one and not inclusive for another, and that's okay. No, right? So we have the broad vision that we're working towards, and we know that there are interactions also between these different discriminations, that they can feed each other as well as inspire each other for action, but they can also fuel each other, right? So we say, we really need to make a dialogical kind of a space where we can find points of common action and common concern, and in that also build better relationships between civil society actors. Another reason is also going back then to our identity as a Jewish organization and the Jewish experience over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of waves of persecution, and also waves of better periods of integration. And this experience of living in diaspora and living as a minority, all these really since the year zero of the common era, when the diaspora was spread out, is really essential, and it creates that commitment of our board members and our staff members and our organization to say, how can we learn also from our own experience of persecution and integration, and how can we share that also with others for the purpose of really seeing the EU as a guarantor of fundamental rights and security and equality for all. So we were founded to support the European institutions in the social cohesion that's needed for the EU to reach its vision as a regional project. First, we see now with the war in Ukraine, we can also see anti-Semitic rhetoric coming up around that war. But anti-Semitic rhetoric comes up very often in relation to various events, tsunamis, COVID, whatever, and I think, why has it been rising? I mean, we've really seen it rising since 2000. I would say we see this trajectory, and there is an increase in polarization in our society, and anti-Semitism has always been a tool to divide. It's been a tool to scapegoat. It's a tool to pit one group against another. And so as our society is becoming more and more polarized, and global communications is only exacerbating that situation. So I think within that context, that it fits the pattern of anti-Semitism over the centuries, that again we see anti-Semitism rising in the context of increasing polarization in society. Yeah, so I mean, I would challenge here to say that yes, far-right movements are involved in Holocaust denial rhetoric, but we also see certainly Holocaust distortion rhetoric being normalized in a lot of other spaces, also within spaces which are not blatantly or explicitly anti-Semitic, to those who are not aware of how anti-Semitism is functioning, right? So, and it's very painful, right? It's very painful for Jewish communities and Jewish individuals to hear that, because it is a collective trauma which has been experienced by the community. And when the facts are distorted, when inappropriate parallels are made, when it's used also then as a weapon against the original victims also of that trauma, it's very mean. It's very painful. It's super inconsiderate, and it's it fits within the vulnerability of our society now to misinformation and propaganda. And we really need to steel ourselves against that and build our resiliency against that, and to really help with the information and digital literacy of youth and adults. But we also need to probably make certain clarifications and raise awareness for people so that they have more empathy and understanding. And part of that process is humanizing of the Jewish people, right? Because traumas can be dismissed or reduced, or when we're not really understanding the humanity of the people who lived it. So when I said also remembrance is a policy area of concern, we can see also other communities are or aren't most often getting the recognition that they need for the traumas that they or their ancestors experienced. And that's not helpful for healing. It's not helpful for transforming structural racism into structural equality. It's not helpful for recognition and mutual recognition, and also creating the mental, emotional space to move on. Right? We need the recognition in order to also somehow move on. And as much as Holocaust denial, distortion, trivialization happens, the more Jewish communities are going to feel that they're not recognized. And that's not helpful for anybody. Besides funding and enough resources, too much work to do, right? In this work of all the ENAR members, the work is never done. It's so hard to end the day and think, it was enough. It's never enough. We're dealing with, in this current political, social, economic context that we're in, the challenge is also to keep our resiliency, to keep our well-being, right? How do we also take care of ourselves and each other so that we're strong enough to keep up the fight, right? And to keep proposing new possibilities, new solutions, new strategies, to keep experimenting, to say, oh, that worked. Let's go, oh, that didn't work. Oh, let's try again, And so I think the biggest challenge is really about how we're resourcing ourselves, not only tangibly in terms of finances and people, but also how are we resourcing ourselves emotionally and physically so that we can not be again victimized, to the fight. I don't know if that makes sense. So this culture of care that we need to have inside of our spaces where we're doing this work is really essential, and something that we're very committed to doing at CEJI, and it's a challenge in the sense of how can we be strong enough to keep going when task lists are like that and like that, Yeah, and then I think there is another really big challenge that we're facing, which is in relation to the fight against anti-Semitism and the fight against racism, and intersectional approaches also then on other forms of discrimination, and how to find the way to have the right balance between the universal or the commonalities and also the specificities of each? How can we have movement and collaboration that is inclusive, that can hold the different needs together towards a common vision? And there are some tensions, there are some polemics, there are prejudices also between different communities. There is sometimes competition for recognition, and I think our role being of a Jewish identity working also on anti-Semitism and on racism is to try to find ways to model, to bring options, to facilitate the coming together of these different movements and spaces. This requires education, educational advocacy, as well as educational programs with the broader society, with policy makers, with the anti-racism movement, and within the different communities. Also, it's a work that needs to be done within the Jewish world. We need to, it needs to be done in all these different spaces to get more and more people who are going in that same direction. Oh gosh, there's so many things I'm really proud of, and that's just so nice too, to say. I've been working with CEJI in one form or another since 1996. And and I've been living in Brussels now 25 years this year. And I've been the director of CEJI since 2006. I'm really proud of the way we've built trust and enlarged our partnerships. And over the years, we've seen many more groups come and cooperate with us that maybe 10, 15 years ago weren't open to more intercultural approaches. So I think that that's a big achievement. Having the Facing Facts network, which started just as a kind of pilot, train the trainer, common minimum standards kind of exercise pilot project in 2011, but now it's a funded network, including civil society organizations across all the communities. Also, well, many of the community, can't say all because there's so many in Europe, but we have anti-racist and Muslim and Roma and disability and LGBT and general human rights organizations all together inside this Facing Facts network, as well as, of course, Jewish organizations. And as I said, also public authorities who are willing to be as equals in this network with the civil society organizations. And I think coming to that point and being in direct interaction, influencing the processes of these working groups on hate crime and hate speech, or the working group on anti-Semitism, or to be part of the anti-racism civil society platform. I mean, to be in these spaces and to bridge our experience at the grassroots, particularly in Belgium, but also through partners in other countries, with what's going on in terms of, informing European policy development, and vice versa. How do we bring developments in European policy to find its relevance with the grassroots actors? I think that's pretty exciting, because 15 years ago, I think we were quite marginalized often in the fields. Our place was a little bit strange for people. What is this Jewish organization doing? All forms of discrimination, and they didn't really know where to put us. But I feel that we've come to a point where it's not questioned anymore, and that's fantastic. So that's helping to influence discourse and the narrative, which I think is important. Yeah. So yeah, we did it pretty early. We did it before the new year in December 22. And, it was quite a big discussion internally, because we know that the problem of hate speech has always been there anyway. We're still having cooperation with other social media platforms, as well as having accounts on other social media platforms. But what made the difference was when Twitter, under its new leadership, closed its safety policy office, and it removed all the measures that had been put in place before. And we say, you know what, they're not even willing to try. Right. So before that, Twitter before, and we saw them go from having no office in Brussels to having one person to having 6, 7 people. They were, we could see every year improvements in their policies. They were engaging. It was, a kind of critical friendship, honest conversations, and we could see some progress, and we can still see, for example, TikTok or, YouTube or Instagram, there is still a willingness to engage, right? It's not enough. It's not enough, but it's not only their problem. We have a problem of hate in society, and it's not all, the web is only, big speakers that spread it more, and it can be used to recruit to these, to really hateful ideologies. But I think for us it was just how can we participate in a space where they aren't even trying, and it was an ethical decision for us. Everybody has their spheres of influence, whether it's in our home with our families, and then the people who interact with our families, whether it's doctors, hospitals, schools, what youth activities, whatever that may be. Then we have our jobs, we have our extended family. We're citizens who can vote, who can organize with our neighbors, whoever. But even without adding new projects onto our very busy personal lives, we can already bring an awareness into our different spheres of influence. And so that is the first thing that we ask. First is to educate yourself. And there are scientifically proven techniques that we can use also to kind of make new habits of thoughts in terms of, trying to reduce or neutralize the biases, but we need to be aware of those biases first. It's not enough to tell people don't be racist. They need to understand what that means. It's an embodied experience. It's something that requires also personal reflection in terms of the ways we are either perpetuating or countering and creating, an alternative, transformative, new way, right? And we all have a choice to make about that. If we see something that's not right, find a way to call it out constructively. And if you don't know how, there are resources available, other civil society organizations and information available always then to support people who want to be actors on something. Report it to the equality body, report it to the police, whatever it is appropriate. So that's the first thing. And then the other thing I would say is support the organizations who are more actively working in this field. So whether it's through funding, whether it's through volunteering, whether it's through sharing information, do what you can and then help the others who are doing more do it better.